to us. Happy New Year to us. Happy New Year. Hi guys, welcome to my channel in 2023. This 2023, the plan is that we are not going to be holding anybody down. And we will make sure that if we are holding anybody down, we let them go. It's not worthy holding anybody down. Today, in 2023, my first video is to say to you, Happy New Year and Prosperity New Year and health. I pray for health for all of us. And thank you for all your support from last year. I know this year the family is growing, and as we grow, there will be more for us to learn, there will be more for us to share, and there will be more for us to do. Well, today, in our new year, I've got a narrative story that I want to share with you. This narrative story today is about a man called David and the son Absalom and his counselor, advisor, God-spoken person named Ahithophel. I want to talk about bitterness. What does bitterness do to us? What do we gain from bitterness? If someone is bitter about us, what happens to them physically, psychologically, mentally, and spiritually, especially? What happens when you are in that situation where you are so bitter against someone? The question today is that, what have you gained? We are in a new year. This brand new year we have just entered. Today is the 6th day of the year. It's still clean as my top. Very clear. Let's keep it clear until the end of the year, and we will be blessed abundantly. A lot of us might know this story already. A lot of us must have read it over and over. But what does it really mean to you when you read a story of David? This passage of David's life. David, Absalom, Ahithophel, and Bathsheba. So there was one day where David was supposed to go for a battle. And the story says that this battle was king's battle. But David did not go for the battle. He sent his war men to go on his behalf. And in the course of the war, the story says that David got up one afternoon and he was just taking a fresh air on top of his house roof. Obviously, he's looking down. He saw a beautiful woman having a shower. He looked at the woman and lusted after her. Those of you who knows the story of David, you know that King David's life was full of drama. As those of you who knows the story of David. He sent his men to go and he sent one of his boys to go and look for this woman. Brought the woman to him. The same afternoon, the story said that David slept with the woman. And then the message came back to the woman to say that, I'm pregnant. So David had to send for Bathsheba's husband to be brought from the war. Why? Because at this time, David is now hatching a plan that I need to cover up what I have done, which a lot of us do, right? It's normal. He's human. I mean, he's a man after God's own heart, but he's human like you and I. So David was trying to cover up his sin, what he has done, his mistake. So he called for Joab to bring Uriah out of the war back to Jerusalem. And Uriah came, obedient servants, came to David. And David made it look as if he wants to find out what is happening at the war. Like Ukraine is having war right now. And then someone we know is at war and they've been sent to go and call to come home because something is happening to their family member. That was similar thing. And then when Uriah came, David inquired of what's happening, how is the war going? Uriah explained everything to David. This is what is happening. We've been able to do this. We've been able to conquer the Amalekites and ABCD and etc. And then David said to Uriah that I need you to go home and rest. You've been at the war for a long time. Uriah did not go home. Uriah went out and joined David's guide men, the guards outside. Joined them there. In the end, slept at the gates, the palace. And then a message was sent to David that Uriah did not go home. So David called back Uriah that evening and asked Uriah, why didn't you go home? You've just come back from a war and you need to go home to your family. And Uriah responds to David that, how can I do that? My mates are out there fighting for their lives, for our country. And then I will go home and have pleasure with my wife? No, I can't do that until the war is over. Humble servants, right? And David said, all right, if that is the case, sleep here. Tomorrow, I'll send you back to the war. And then Uriah slept at the palace. That night, the story said that David gave Uriah so much to eat and so much to drink. And Uriah got so drunk to the point where David knew, because remember, David is in action plan here. So in the morning, that night, he told Uriah, you sleep here. Tomorrow morning, I'll send you back to the war. And David went inside, wrote a letter to another guy who is above Uriah. Wrote a letter and gave it to Uriah and told Uriah to take the letter to Joab. And that letter was a death warranty of Uriah. But he did not open the letter. Obviously, his master have sent him with letter. How dare him open it? Obedient servant. He held his own death warranty and gave it to a colleague. And the instruction in the letter was saying that put Uriah at the front wall, the hottest spot of the wall, for him to be killed specifically. Which spot Joab should put Uriah? Uriah did exactly as David as instructed. And then in the course of that, we all know what happened. Uriah was killed at the wall. And then a message came back to David that Uriah is dead. David quickly went and took Bathsheba, Uriah's wife, as a wife. And as we all know, those days, there was no dating. When you see a woman and you want her, the same day you take her home. It's not like our time where you have to go through a series of... Bathsheba became David's wife after mourning for the husband. The story said that David allowed her to mourn for the husband, then got her as a wife. At this point, there is somebody in the story called Ahithophel, which I'm sure a lot of us that are familiar with Ahithophel's story knows exactly what I'm coming to say. Ahithophel was a spokesman of God, what we call in the Bible an oracle of God. He was described as a powerful man. And when he speaks, it's like God has spoken. It's a grace that was given to him. He was a counselor to kings who fears God, like David. When Ahithophel got to find out that David has done such a thing, he was angry and he became bitter. Why did he become bitter? Why, as the spokesman of God, an oracle of God, a counselor, a man with high reputation, becomes so angry and bitter? Because Uriah is a son-in-law of Ahithophel. And what annoys Ahithophel the most is that when they needed additional soldiers, he went to Hittites and brought Uriah to David to be fighting for David. And then when he brought Uriah, he realized that Uriah is a person that fears God. And he gave his granddaughter, who is Bathsheba, to Uriah. So why did Ahithophel got mad? This is his reason. There is so many occasions where people hurt us. There's so many occasions where you have not done anything. All you've done is do well, do good. You are always doing good to people, but they pay you back. I'm sure a lot of us will relate to this story I'm talking about. You've been hurt. You've helped somebody and they stabbed you at your back. A soldier I went to find for you gave my daughter to marry. You have killed him and you have taken my granddaughter as a wife without my permission. Because what? You are a king. The man became bitter. What has made you bitter today? It could be worse than Ahithophel's case. But I want to tell you today being 2023, that no matter how bitter you are, you're not doing yourself any favor. You're not doing yourself any help, especially mentally, psychologically. And when you are a spiritual person, we don't even want to talk about that, because you know what I'm coming to say. The God that we serve does not want us to be in bitterness, because he forgave us so that we can forgive others. At this point, when David realized that Ahithophel is very angry with him, he could not do anything. And Ahithophel decided not to counsel David in any way again. At the same time, Absalom, David's son, King David's son, is now, he is planning to overthrow his father of the kingdom so he can come to be a king. He has bought a lot of the people's hearts, the Israelites' hearts, from his father, because he was trying to do so many things to help them so that they can follow him. And then Ahithophel came to Absalom and told Absalom that, I'm here to be your counselor. It was a shock to Absalom. Absalom, in a story, Absalom asked Ahithophel, I thought you are my father's friend. He said, yes, I am, but I am going with the person that the people are going after. Because at this point, David was losing the followers to his son, which is another story entirely that I'll come to talk about that later. Ahithophel became an advisor, a counselor to Absalom, and he became a threat to David, to a point that David had to run away from his own palace, because when Ahithophel advised you, you cannot go wrong. That fear of Ahithophel being an advisor to the son did not sit well with David at all. So David decided to save his life through another advisor who advised him that this is the time for you to run away. Otherwise, your son will come and kill you. And whilst David was running to Mount Olives, he was praying. David prayed a prayer. And that is what the song we sing, the songwriter wrote in Psalm 51 verse number 10. That creates in me a clean heart and renew within me a right spirit. Cast me not away from your presence, but restore unto me a joy of salvation. That's where that scripture came from. And that is why David wrote that scripture. And that scripture applied to you and I today. That we have to be saying it every day. Because we don't know who we have offended. We don't know how much we offend God. We don't know how much we offend people. We always think that people always offend us. This person has said this about me, my colleague did this to me, and my husband did this to me, and my ex did this to me, and my mom did this to me, my father did this to me when I was growing up. I can't forgive them. There are so many people on this planet that their past is hunting them today because of unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is a deadly poison. You become bitter. And that bitterness leads you nowhere except destruction. Illness. For what? Just because you don't want to forgive. When you don't forgive someone, it's like you are pressing the person on the ground. And for you to be able to press someone, you have to be down on your knees. You have to be literally, if you are not down on your knees, you'll be bending somehow to be able to press the person. And if you have not forgiven the person and you are pressing them down, you are both down, right? So what's the point? Let's forgive. It's difficult. Forgiveness is the hardest thing. Believe you me. You can send your comments and I'll tell you some of the personal things that I have forgiven other people. Family members, not just like friends and no, family. They hurt you to your bone. They hurt you to the point that, when you see them, you just want them gone. But the power of forgiveness, that's something amazing to your spirits. And it makes you like a a free bear. When you forgive someone, there is a passage that says that when you forgive someone, it's like you are putting cold fire on their head. How can fire be cold? That means that when the person sees, when you forgive them, they don't know what to do with themselves anymore. I'm a living testimony. I'm not just telling you a story. I have been through it. When people tell you in your face who you cannot be, you are a witch, all kinds of names. I don't know what is hurting you right now. I don't know who is pressing on your wrong buttons at this time. But all I want to tell you today, don't be Ahithophel. Why? Because it got to a point where after David has prayed, David said that, and this verse, if you look at the verses, it's the 2 Samuel chapter 15. David prayed that, Lord, turn Ahithophel's counsel to foolishness. This is where the terminology came from, where a lot of us are using in the church. Lord, turn Ahithophel, turn Ahithophel's wisdom to foolishness. This is where the terminology came from, because David prayed that prayer. So for us to qualify to be able to pray that prayer, we have to forgive as well. At this point, David has gone, because David is a pursuit. David is in pursuit with God. You see, so because David is in pursuit with God, he was able to go and consult with God by asking for forgiveness. God forgave David, but Ahithophel was still holding on to what David has done. That's what sometimes happens. You can see that somebody does something against you. The person has forgiven themselves because they know what they did is not right. They have gone and forgiven themselves and they have freed themselves. And you are still holding on to it as if there's no tomorrow. My friends, it's not worth it. My lovely people, it's not worth it. This life we have, I remember my mom used to say, it's only one. It's not one. Do not let somebody sit in your happiness, because when you are in bitterness, somebody is actually sitting on your happiness. Why do you have to allow that? You have basically caged your own self in your own home, but you are in prison. Free yourself. Ahithophel became bitter, resentful. It was true. He was not treated fairly. He wasn't treated fairly because he helped David. He's been helping David. Only for David to do that to him. He was not treated fairly. A lot of us are not being treated fairly. You will sacrifice your time, your everything for a husband, for a wife, and then they turn against you. You sacrifice time for somebody at work, maybe your manager, and then they give the promotion to somebody. Your time is coming. So far as you are still alive and there is life and you are not on life supports, I said you will pull through. You will pull through. You will pull through because the battle, he said, where if you know how to fight your fights, he will not fight for you. In the end, Ahithophel, the 2 Samuel chapter 16, verse 23. It says in that passage, the story says that Ahithophel was a spokesman of God. Okay, that's that passage. A chapter later, which is 2 Samuel chapter 17 verse 23. So the 23 is the key here. The number 23 in 17, Ahithophel went home and hung himself. The story says that before Ahithophel hanged himself, he went home and put his house in order, and then after that hanged himself. How can a spokesman of God, a man full of that power and grace, a counselor of a whole nation, that because of his counsel, David is running? Because it got to a time where every advice he was given was not being taken. His first advice he gave Absalom, which is David's son, was that we are going to build a tent for you on top of the palace, and you are going to sleep with all your father's concubines, all your father's wives. And Absalom went in the tent and slept with all the women. And that made Absalom very powerful. That means that his father was not able to do it because this counsel was coming from the oracle of God, the spokesman of God. His second advice he brought, nobody took it. Another advisor that Absalom went to seek told him, don't follow Ahithophel's advice. He was advising Absalom that we are going to mount up on this section and we will wait for your father's army. When they come, we will kill all of them, including we will look for your father. And he was telling Absalom where his dad normally hides when there is war. So the other advisor told Absalom that don't listen to him. You know how powerful your father is. Your father is not an ordinary man. He was appointed by God himself into this position. And nobody can kill your father except God himself. Because your father loves God. You see, when you are in pursuit of God, and you are quick to come to the Lord when something happens, you put the enemy to shame. When you do something against someone and you actually come and open up that, look, this is what I've done. I'm wrong. You see, the person that you are speaking to at that time, you've become so remorse. And even if your heart is hardened, you become a bit softer because they approached you. And that is the David strategy that he had with God. Because he loves God to the point that he knows that without God, he can't do anything. Without God, can you do everything? That's my question to you. In 2023, none of us are going to be like Ahithophel. We will forgive. We will not let, because Ahithophel hanged himself. That is physical. Our one could be spiritual. It could be mentally. It could be emotional. Because you will lock yourself in. When we talk about death and we talk about somebody hanging themselves, we talk about, that's the physical. At least we can see this story in the physical. But you and I, if we don't forgive and we have bitterness, our one could be mentally. It will affect us mentally. It will affect us psychologically, emotionally. You become so sensitive. This is my narrative story to you. And this is my story this year. I pray for you that forgiveness will be part and parcel of your life. If it is difficult for you to forgive, find reasons to forgive. Sit down and analyze and see why you should hold that thing, and ask yourself, keep asking yourself, what's my reason? I mean, what would I gain? What would I gain? What would I gain? If I keep holding this, what would I gain? I've had people that have offended me, family members that have offended me, that I forgave them before they came. I forgave them. So the first phone call I had, I picked. Spoke to them as if nothing has happened. And I never spoke about it. You know why? Because I've let go before they came. It was not easy. I'm not saying that it happened overnight. Majority of it is because I was praying for them. That whatever they've done to me, somebody you know what? We don't even want to go there. I don't want to go there. My next video, I'll go into deeper. What accusation have I not have? All kinds. All kinds. But I always forgive. And the more you forgive, you become stronger. And when you don't forgive and you become resentful, you see that it becomes attraction. It becomes like a magnet. Anything that anybody does, you hold it. You don't let go. Please, let go. Let go. Shalom. God bless you.